You're there, sitting in front of the screen, or maybe lying down, staring at the ceiling. There's something you know you should be doing. That project, that difficult conversation, that habit you promised yourself you'd start, and an invisible, heavy force holds you in place. You criticize yourself, call yourself lazy, undisciplined. You try to force yourself to move, but every inch of effort creates 2 inches of resistance. You're at war, but your enemy has your own face. This internal war, this constant battle against our own tendencies, fears, and procrastination is perhaps the greatest source of exhaustion for modern human beings. We were taught that life is a battle, and that willpower is our best weapon. But what if that very belief is the source of our suffering? What if the fight is the disease, not the cure? What if I told you that this force sabotaging you isn't an enemy to be defeated, but a guide waiting to be heard? By the end of this video, you will learn a method of radical observation, based on the ancient wisdom of the Tao, that will not only calm this internal war, but will use the energy of your fears to propel you toward your true path. The diagnosis needs to be precise, because the condition is universal. The strategy of fighting against yourself is, fundamentally, a flawed strategy. The resistance you feel isn't weakness. It's not a character defect. It's a message. Think of it as an alarm system for your body, your psyche. When we ignore or try to suppress parts of ourselves, the fear of rejection, the anger over an injustice, the deep insecurity that tells us we're not good enough, they don't just disappear. On the contrary, they gain power in the dark. They feed on our denial and begin to control us in ways we don't even realize. This is what depth psychology calls psychological possession, being governed by what we refuse to see in ourselves. The perfectionist who revises a simple email dozens of times isn't just detail-oriented. He's possessed by his paralyzing fear of making a mistake. The nice guy who never says no, who grins and bears it, isn't a saint. He's possessed by the anger and resentment he refuses to express. He becomes a puppet of his own repression, and that energy will leak out in toxic ways, in passive aggressiveness, in psychosomatic illnesses. Here, we dive directly into Carl Jung's concept of the shadow. Jung, one of the most courageous thinkers of the human soul, taught that the shadow is the repository of everything we reject in ourselves. Our insecurities, our desires, our fears, everything we consider unacceptable for the image we want to project to the world. And he gave us a brutally honest warning. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Your chronic procrastination, your relationships that always end the same way, your unexplained anxiety, that isn't fate. It's your shadow in the driver's seat of your car, while you're in the passenger seat, thinking you're in control. Our struggle is, in fact, a futile attempt to keep our persona, our social mask, intact, while the shadow, starved for acknowledgement, leaks through the cracks, sabotaging our best efforts and leaving us exhausted, wondering why life seems so hard. Now that we understand the enemy, or rather, the part of ourselves we treat as an enemy, we need to question the strategy. If fighting doesn't work, what does? The answer is counterintuitive. It challenges everything our culture of productivity and brute force self-help has taught us. And for that, we need to look to the East, to the philosophy of the Tao. The central metaphor of Taoism is water. Think about the nature of water. It's soft, flexible, yielding to any pressure. But at the same time, nothing is more powerful in overcoming resistance. Water can flow around the biggest rock or, with enough time, wear it down to sand. It doesn't fight obstacles, it moves around them. It flows, fighting against the flow of life. And that includes the flow of our own inner nature. Is like trying to swim against a strong current. You might be the strongest swimmer in the world, but the end result is inevitable: exhaustion and defeat. You're not going anywhere. True strength, the strength the Tao teaches us, isn't in resistance, but in adaptation and effortless action, a concept called Wu Wei. Wu Wei doesn't mean passivity or laziness. It means acting in harmony with the natural flow of things, without wasted effort, without internal friction. This is where the wisdom of Alan Watts becomes our compass. Watts was a master at translating these deep concepts for the anxious and controlling Western mind. He would say that the Tao is the natural course of things, the inherent intelligence of the universe. Trying to improve yourself through brute force, through repression, is like trying to smooth the ripples on a lake with a hot iron. The more you try, the more chaos you create. The very attempt to force calmness generates more anxiety. The very attempt to force discipline generates more resistance. The paradox is that the first step toward true harmony, toward real change, is to stop interfering. It's to stop the war. This brings us from theory to practice. How do we apply this wisdom of water, this Wu Wei, to our internal war? The answer is a method I call radical observation. It's a practice that seems simple on the surface, but has the power to dismantle years of internal conflict. It works like this. The exact moment resistance arises, the urge to procrastinate, the wave of anxiety before a task, the self-critical thought, instead of fighting, you stop. Just stop, and you observe. You become a scientist of your own inner experience. You observe the anxiety in your chest, the tightness in your stomach, the sabotaging thought echoing in your mind, the physical sensation of laziness weighing on your shoulder. The key here is to observe without judgment, and, crucially, without the intention of changing what is happening. You aren't observing so that the anxiety will go away. You are observing to understand the anxiety. Like a meteorologist watching a storm, you watch your internal weather. This simple yet profound practice creates a space. A small but powerful space between the I that observes and the emotion being observed. In that space, the possession loses its power. The emotion is no longer, I am anxious, but rather, I feel a sensation of anxiety passing through me. Laziness is no longer, I am lazy, but becomes, I notice a strong sensation of inertia in my body. In that space, you are no longer the slave to the emotion. You are the consciousness that witnesses it. And from that place of awareness, action becomes possible. Not a reactive, forced action, but an inspired and aligned. This practice is the perfect synthesis of Taoism with one of the most powerful principles of Stoicism, the dichotomy of control. Philosophers like Seneca and Emperor Marcus Aurelius taught us the virtue of clearly distinguishing between what is in our power and what is not. We cannot control the spontaneous arising of fear, anger, or sadness. These are, for the most part, events external to our direct will, reactions of our nervous system. But we can absolutely control our reaction to them. Radical observation is the practice of relentlessly focusing only on what we can control, our mindful, non-judgmental awareness. You don't control the storm, but you can control the helm of your ship. And your helm is your attention. So how do you bring this into your life today? Let's resolve the conflict with 3 practical steps. The first step is, welcome the resistance. The next time you're in an internal struggle, when you feel that force holding you back, the first reaction is self-criticism. Interrupt that pattern. Instead, take a deep breath and say to yourself, mentally or in a low voice, okay, the resistance is here. I see it. Welcome. This might seem strange, but this act of welcoming disarms the war before it even begins. You're trading the sword for a handshake. The second step, describe the sensation without judgment. Shift from the role of judge to that of a reporter. Observe the physical and mental manifestation of the resistance. I feel a tightness in my chest, like a rope being pulled. There's a thought in my mind that says, you're not going to make it. You better not even try. The energy in my body is low. Just observe and describe, like someone describing clouds passing in the sky. No drama, no story, just the raw facts of your experience. And the third step, the most transformative, question the shadow. With genuine curiosity, as if you were talking to a scared part of yourself, ask this sensation. What are you trying to protect me from? The answer might surprise you. That paralyzing fear of failure? Maybe it's trying to protect you from the deep shame you felt as a child when you were humiliated in front of the class. The procrastination that stops you from starting your business? Maybe it's trying to protect you from the exhaustion, the burnout you saw your parents suffer. This question transforms the shadow from a monster into a misguided guardian. And so, answering our initial question, the force that sabotages you was not an enemy. It was your shadow, an unintegrated part of you, desperately trying to communicate something vital through the language of resistance. By stopping the fight and starting to observe, you don't surrender to fear, you integrate it. The energy you spent on the internal war, the immense amount of willpower wasted fighting against yourself, now becomes clarity and fuel. Fuel for authentic movement, guided not by brute force, but by the flow of your own nature, your personal Tao. If this journey of self-discovery made sense to you and brought you a new perspective, subscribe to the channel to dive deeper into these topics together. Leave a like so this message can reach more people who are at war with themselves. What internal enemy do you find yourself fighting most in your day-to-day life? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's turn this space into a community of observers.